Richmond in the Tennessee Stone Fort. To the listener, this book has been inspired by ancient fictional history and is written and narrated by AI. All rights to text and ideas reserved to Blunt Turtle Publishing. Chapter 1: The Letter from Nashville. In the spring in the year of our Lord 1892 had arrived like a slow-burning match over the hills of Middle Tennessee. The dogwoods had already blossomed, leaving the air faintly sweet and heavy with promise. In a small law office on Cedar Street, Richmond Hale sat hunched over an oak desk, the noon light falling across a clutter of newspapers, survey maps, and a letter sealed in red wax. Richmond was 28, a former bricklayer apprentice to an antiquarian society that had gone bankrupt 2 years before. Since then he had survived on odd surveying jobs and research commissions from anyone who needed a man who could read both Latin inscriptions combined with old railroad maps. His family claimed he had inherited his late father's sense of adventure and his mother's worrying streak, an unfortunate combination for a quiet town life. The letter bore the seal of the Tennessee Historical Commission in Nashville. He broke it open, expecting another polite rejection to one of his proposals. Instead, he read, "Mr. Hale, you are hereby invited to consult on an excavation near the Cumberland River, 2 miles north of the old state capitol grounds. The site appears to be the remains of an earthwork fortification not listed on any Civil War registry. Your familiarity with archaic cartography and indigenous mounds recommends you for the task. Time is of the essence. Kindly present yourself by the week's end." Dr. Ezra Lang, acting curator. Richmond blinked twice at the name. Lang. He remembered hearing it whispered among university circles in Knoxville. A tinkerer, a scientist, a man who had once tried to build a steam-powered telegraph that could transmit photographs. Mad Ezra, they called him. He folded the letter carefully. Nashville was 3 days by coach, and he was down to his last $15. Yet something in the phrasing, earthwork fortification not listed, stirred a hunger he thought he had buried with his father. An undiscovered fort, perhaps older than the state itself. That was the sort of find that could restore his reputation. He rose, found his satchel, and began to pack. Compass, sketchbook, magnifying lens, and his father's old revolver. He hesitated before dropping the gun inside. He didn't expect trouble, but Tennessee's backroads had grown dangerous since the real expansion displaced so many drifters. That evening, as he locked the office, he found his sister Maggie waiting on the steps. Her hair was tied back beneath a straw hat, and she held a basket of food wrapped in gibbon. "You got another wild letter, didn't you?" she said, eyes bright with amusement. "How can you tell? Your ears turn red whenever adventure calls." She pressed the basket into his hands. "At least promise you'll write me if you reach Nashville alive. And don't let those professors talk you into crawling through snake holes again." Richmond laughed. "I'll be careful. It's just a consultation. I'll be home before the month's out." But as the evening train hissed into the station, the air smelled faintly of rain and iron, and Maggie's expression turned uneasy. "Something's changing, Richmond," she murmured. "The old things are waking up again." He almost asked what she meant, but the conductor's call cut her words short. He boarded, the whistle echoed through the valley, and by the time the train curved past the last line of cedars, his sister's figure had vanished in the dusk. Chapter 2: The Professor and the Photographer. The journey to Nashville passed in a blur of smoky hills and red clay. Richmond arrived at dawn, bleary-eyed, stepping onto the platform where the smell of coal and magnolia mingled. The city was stirring, a tangle of brick streets, church spires, and new electric wires strung like spider silk above the rooftops. At the appointed hour he presented himself at the commission offices, a converted mansion near Capitol Hill. Inside, shelves of artifacts lined the walls: potsherds, cannon fragments, boons polished like ivory. Behind a desk cluttered with copper instruments sat Dr. Ezra Lang. Lang was in his 50s, thin as a fence rail, with spectacles perched precariously on the end of his nose. His office hummed faintly with the buzz of something electrical, a glass sphere sparking blue on a wooden stand. "Mr. Hale," Lang exclaimed, rising delighted, absolutely delighted. You came faster than expected. Excellent. He shook Richmond's hand with surprising strength. We have much to discuss and little time before the rains return. What exactly have you found, Doctor? Lang's grin widened. Not I. We. Miss Whitfield found it first. At his signal, a woman stepped from behind a curtain separating the laboratories from a dark room. Clara Whitfield was perhaps 30, with sharp features and the calm confidence of someone used to being underestimated. She carried a brass-bound camera and smelled faintly of developing fluid. I was photographing the riverbank for a feature on the city's expansion, she said, and my tripod sank into hollow ground. When I brushed away the soil, I found a line of stone too precise to be natural, but nothing like Union Ford masonry. Dr. Lang believes it may predate the war entirely. Lang adjusted his spectacles. Indeed, the alignment suggests something much older, perhaps Mississippian, though the stonework, it's strange. I need an expert eye. Richmond studied the photographs she handed Zim. Plates showing a half-buried arch and what looked like carvings along its rim. Geometric spirals unlike any frontier design he knew. Where exactly is this site? He asked. Lang smiled cryptically. A few miles north of the Capitol grounds. On land the city means to sell for quarrying. We must reach it before the contractors arrive. I have a wagon ready. Before noon they were rolling out of Nashville, the professor chattering, Clara adjusting her camera, and Richmond staring at the skyline shrinking behind them. The road followed the Cumberland River into a valley heavy with mist. Farmers watched them pass, their faces drawn and wary. At a crossroads, they stopped to water the horses. A man in a tattered Union coat emerged from a shack and limped toward them. His hair was gray, his face burned by sun. You folks heading to the bluffs? He asked. Lang nodded. Survey work. The man, Silas Boone, as he introduced himself, spat into the dust. Ought to let that ground be. There's things buried there that ain't meant for the daylight. Fort Red Clay, they used to call it, though it weren't no fort built by soldiers. Richmond exchanged a glance with Clara. You've seen it. Seen enough. My regiment camped there in 1964. Ground hummed at night, like bees underfoot. Men heard voices out the earthworks. He tapped the side of his head. I left off to the third man vanished. Lang chuckled politely. Fascinating folklore, my good man, but we deal in science. Silas stared at him, expression hard. Science ain't what keeps you safe out there. When they offered him a coin for directions, he refused. I'll come with you. Someone ought to tell you when to turn back. They reached the bluff near sundown. The site overlooked a bend in the river where willows hung low over the current. Beyond a curtain of vines, the ground indeed sagged inward, a circle of stones half swallowed by earth. Lang wasted no time. He set up his instruments, measuring magnetic fields with a curious handheld device that crackled softly. Extraordinary. The readings fluctuate with the compass bearing, he muttered. Clara photographed each section methodically. Richmond knelt to brush away soil from one of the carvings. Beneath centuries of grime emerged a symbol shaped like an eye within a spiral. Silas stood apart, watching the tree line. Evenings come in fast. He said, best not be here after dark. We'll camp close by. Lang replied, the morning light will serve better for excavation. That night the four of them pitched tents near the river. Fireflies danced above the reeds, and the air smelled of damp stone. Richmond sat by the fire, sketching the spiral from memory, when Clara joined him with a cup of coffee. Do you think it's ancient? She asked. Older than the Civil War? Certainly, but there's something deliberate about its pattern. It reminds me of electrical diagrams I've seen. She smiled faintly. You sound like the doctor. I mean it. Look, each curve could represent a current loop, converging on a central line. If the people who built this understood magnetism, even symbolically, a crack of twigs cut him off. Silas appeared, face pale. Something's moving out there, the old soldier whispered by the stones. They grabbed lanterns and hurried to the excavation. The mist had thickened. Between the shadows, Richmond saw movement, perhaps only the wind in the vines. Yet it felt purposeful. Then came a low vibration, like distant thunder. Though the sky was clear, Lang's device crackled furiously. Good heavens, he breathed. It's resonating. The ground quivered once, sharply, and from within the earth came a sound like a sigh. They stood frozen. Then silence returned, broken only by the river's murmur. Lang laughed nervously. Seismic tremor. That's all. The substructure responding to temperature variance. Silas shook his head. That weren't the earth. Richmond felt his pulse hammering. He knelt again by the spiral, tracing its outer ring. The stone was warm. Whatever lay beneath Fort Red Clay was not sleeping quietly. Chapter 3. The opening in the earth. Dawn broke over the Cumberland River in a pale, misty wash of light. Richmond awoke stiff from sleeping on a thin blanket beneath the canvas of his tent. The river glimmered faintly as he rubbed the chill from his arms and glanced at the sight. Lang was already crouched over the stones, calibrating his instruments, muttering to himself about magnetic flux and crystalline anomalies. Clara appeared behind Jim, carrying a tray with a steaming tin pot of coffee and 2 cups. Silas stood apart, his eyes scanning the tree line, never resting. Morning, Richmond said, accepting a cup. Did the stones do anything else last night? Silas grunted. No, but I heard things moving under the roots before the fire went out. Not men, not animals. Richmond sipped the coffee and frowned. We'll need to start digging carefully. If the stones respond to movement or temperature, any hasty action might be unwise. Gentle probing will tell us nothing. We need to uncover the structure. With that, Lang and Richmond began. Clara photographed each stage, her lens capturing shadows that seemed to dance on the edges of the frame. The soil was surprisingly soft, yet beneath it lay layers of stone arranged in almost architectural precision. Hours passed, and the trench deepened. Richmond worked methodically, removing dirt and recording the position of each stone. Around midday, his trowel struck something hollow. A sound echoed from beneath, a soft, resonant hum, vibrating through the earth. Richmond froze, glancing at Silas. You feel that? He whispered. Silas nodded. All bones, or worse. Lang dropped to his knees, his hands trembling. By the heavens, this is not ordinary stonework. Look here. The stones form a perfect circle, with carvings on every facing. It's almost mechanical in its geometry. Clara leaned over, squinting at the markings. They look like runes or symbols. I don't recognize them from any indigenous or colonial designs I've studied. Richmond brushed the dirt away from one of the central stones. A spiral, larger than the ones photographed the day before, emerged. At the center of the spiral, a small, perfectly round depression had been carved into the stone. When Richmond pressed his palm against it, a subtle vibration coursed through his arm. He pulled back sharply, heart racing. Silas muttered, I told you, there's something here that shouldn't be disturbed. Lang, however, was already pulling instruments from his bag. He placed a delicate brass compass into the central depression. The needle twitched violently, spinning in erratic circles. Sparks crackled along the rim of the compass, and the vibration Richmond had felt intensified. Remarkable, Lang said, eyes wide with awe and fear. The stone is resonant, some form of energy, magnetic, perhaps, or something older, something beyond modern understanding. Clara stepped back, her camera dangling from her neck. Or dangerous. Richmond felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at the forest beyond the excavation site. The mist seemed thicker now, curling between the trees like fingers. A faint sound drifted on the wind, a low, murmuring whisper, indecipherable but unmistakably human. Silas drew his coat tighter around his shoulders. That's it. I can't stay here. Something's calling from the earth. And it's not calling to me, it's calling to you. Lang frowned. Preposterous. You'll scare off any chance at discovery. Call it what you will, Silas said, voice grim, but I've seen men driven mad by less. You dig too deep, and you won't just find history, you'll wake it. Richmond stared at the spiral again. The depression at its center seemed almost to pulse now. A soft heartbeat beneath the stone. He reached down again, hand trembling. This time, he pressed the palm firmly into the depression. A sudden warmth spread up his arm, and the ground beneath his knees shivered. Clara gasped. Richmond stepped back. The vibration intensified, and the earth itself seemed to sigh. A section of soil at the edge of the trench slumped and shifted, revealing a narrow, dark opening, a tunnel descending beneath the stone circle. Leng's eyes sparkled with manic delight. By all means, we have found the entrance. The fort, it's not merely a ruin. It's a subterranean complex. Silas swore under his breath. Told you so. Richmond looked down the tunnel. The air that rose from it was cold and dry, carrying the faint smell of stone and decay. Somewhere below, he could hear a whisper again, soft but insistent, almost forming words he could not understand. We should go carefully, he said, pulling his gloves tighter. We don't know how deep it goes, or what we might disturb. Lang already had his lantern lit, placing it inside the mouth of the tunnel. Clara followed, holding her camera ready to document. Silas lingered at the mouth, muttering prayers under his breath, while Richmond paused one last time to examine the spiral at the entrance. A sudden gust of wind, or perhaps the sigh of the earth itself, ruffled his hair. He swallowed hard. Whatever lay beneath Fort Red Clay, it had been waiting a long time. And now, Richmond Hale and his companions had found it. As the four of them descended into darkness, the whispering grew louder, almost intelligible. The tunnel walls were smooth, carved with the same spirals as the stones above, guiding them deeper. Richmond's pulse quickened, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Something ancient, something hidden, was waiting below, and he knew that once they entered, there would be no turning back. Chapter 4. The Labyrinth Beneath the Bluff. The tunnel twisted downward like a serpent coiled in stone. Richmond led the way, lantern held high, its flickering glow revealing carved spirals and geometric shapes etched into the walls. Clara followed closely, snapping photographs, her camera occasionally catching faint glimmers of something metallic embedded in the stone. Lang walked behind her, muttering measurements and calculations, while Silas brought up the rear, muttering prayers and warnings under his breath. The air was dry and surprisingly cool, carrying a faint metallic tang. With each step, the hum beneath the stones grew stronger, resonating through the soles of their boots and vibrating along their spines. Richmond found himself gripping his father's revolver, though he doubted its usefulness against whatever lay in these depths. After 20 minutes of careful descent, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. The walls rose 20 feet high, carved with spirals and concentric circles that glowed faintly in the lantern light. A circular dais of polished stone occupied the center, its surface etched with strange symbols. At the edges of the chamber, alcoves held sculptures of humanoid figures, their faces twisted into expressions that were almost human but not quite. Lang's voice broke the silence. By all that is rational, this architecture is incredible. The precision is almost impossible without advanced tools. He knelt to examine the floor, brushing away dust from a series of interlocking patterns. Look here, these lines are not decorative. They form a map of some kind, perhaps a navigational or ceremonial device. Clara moved closer to one of the alcoves, her camera clicking softly. Richmond, look at their eyes. They are hollow, but some of them reflect the lantern, almost like mirrors or lenses. Richmond approached the dais. The central symbol, the spiral with a depression at its heart, glimmered faintly. He placed his palm against it again, and the same warmth spread through his arm. The chamber hummed in response, louder this time, like a voice of the earth itself. Silas muttered, I don't like it. The ground, it's alive. A sudden shiver ran through the air, and the spirals on the walls began to glow brighter, pulsating in rhythm with the hum beneath their feet. Richmond called back, startled. This isn't just architecture, he said. It's a mechanism. Some kind of machine. Lang's eyes gleamed. Yes, a machine of stone and symbol, perhaps harnessing magnetical geothermal energy, or both. Imagine what knowledge the builders must have had. Clara frowned. examining the patterns, or imagine what power it still has. There's something dangerous about it. Richmond, I can feel it. Richmond nodded, uneasy. We need to proceed carefully. Document everything, but don't touch anything else without thinking. We don't know what triggers the mechanism. As they explored the chamber, Richmond noticed a narrow passage partially concealed behind a carved relief of a serpent coiled around a spiral. The opening descended further into darkness, narrower than the main tunnel. Looks like a corridor, Richmond said, crouching to examine it. Could be more chambers beyond. Could also be a trap. Silas grunted. I vote we pray first. Lang waved dismissively. Superstition will not guide us forward. Richmond hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. Finally, he led the group into the passage, Silas muttering warnings behind them. The walls here were smoother, almost polished, and the spirals carved along them seemed to move, or at least the flickering light made them appear to shift. After another 10 minutes of careful progress, they entered a second chamber. It was smaller than the first, but the carvings here were more intricate, almost labyrinthine. On the floor, a mosaic depicted a river winding through hills, with tiny human figures scattered along its banks. Some of the figures were shown climbing, some kneeling, and others, disturbingly, vanishing into the river itself. Clara leaned over the mosaic. Richmond, these look like warnings, or records, or maybe both. Richmond nodded slowly. I think they're instructions. The builders wanted someone to understand this place, but only if they were clever enough. Lang's attention was drawn to a series of small recesses along the walls. Inside each recess rested a crystal orb, faintly glowing. He lifted one carefully. Remarkable. These crystals, they're aligned with the carvings. They might amplify or store energy. I've never seen anything like this. As Lang spoke, a low rumble began deep beneath their feet. The hum from earlier grew louder, more insistent, and the spiral on the dais began to glow with a pale blue light. Richmond stepped back, hand on the revolver. Something's waking up, Silas said grimly. Before anyone could respond, the floor beneath the mosaic shifted. The tiles moved like a puzzle, rearranging themselves to reveal a deep shaft leading further downward. A chill draft rose from the opening, carrying with it the faint scent of iron and decay. Lang peered over the edge. Fascinating. This is an entire subterranean network. Incredible. Clara grabbed Richmond's arm. Or deadly. I don't like this. Richmond, whatever this is, it's alive in some sense. Richmond studied the shaft. The whispering had returned, faint but clear now, like voices carried on the wind. He felt a strange pull toward the opening, a compulsion he could barely resist. Silas stepped forward, planting his hand on Richmond's shoulder. You don't know what you're dealing with. Leave it alone. Some doors are not meant to be opened. Richmond took a deep breath. We're already in. We can't turn back now, but we proceed carefully. Together, Lang began lowering a rope into the shaft, his excitement undiminished by the ominous surroundings. Clara hesitated, snapping a few final photographs. Silas reluctantly followed, muttering under his breath. Richmond took one last look at the mosaics, feeling the hum of the chamber resonate through him. As they descended into the shadowy shaft, the walls seemed to close in slightly, the spirals on their surface shifting as if aware of their presence. The whispering grew louder, forming words that Richmond could almost understand. The Watcher see, the Chosen rise, beware the Eye. He shivered. Whatever lay below, it had been waiting for centuries. And now, Richmond and his companions were about to face the secrets buried beneath Fort Red Clay. Chapter 5. The Chamber of Eyes. The shaft opened into a cavern larger than any chamber above, but the air here was thick with an oppressive stillness. Lantern light danced over the walls, revealing hundreds of hollow sockets carved in stone eyes staring out from every angle. Some reflected their lanterns like mirrors, others seemed to absorb light, creating small patches of unnatural darkness. Richmond's pulse quickened. This isn't just architecture, he whispered. It's surveillance, some kind of warning system. Lang knelt, examining the walls with his instruments, or a recording. These orbs could store images or energy, or consciousness, even. It's beyond anything modern science understands. Clara held her camera close. It's watching us, she said, her voice trembling. I can feel it. Silas muttered prayers again, crossing himself repeatedly. I've seen this before. Legends, old fort spirits, guardians of sacred places. If we disturb them, we die. As Richmond stepped forward toward the dais in the center, a low hum filled the chamber. The orb's eyes glowed faintly in sequence, tracing their movements, almost like the room itself was alive. Richmond's hand instinctively moved to the central spiral symbol, and when he touched it, the hum intensified. Then it spoke, not with words, but with impressions, thoughts forced into his mind. Chosen, the Watcher see. Test of courage and mind. Step forward or be claimed. Richmond staggered back, heart pounding. It's speaking to me. All of us, maybe. Lang, Clara, Silas, we need to be careful. Everything here responds to thought, intention. The floor trembled, and a hidden mechanism shifted. Portions of the stone tiles slid aside, revealing a staircase spiraling downward. From the shadows, faint whispering called, beckoning them deeper. Richmond felt compelled, drawn toward the staircase despite his fear. Whatever is below, it knows we're coming. Richmond said, we go together, and we go cautiously. No one touches anything without permission from the group. Lang's excitement overcame his caution. Think of the knowledge waiting for us. Secrets that could rewrite history. Richmond's eyes hardened, and possibly kill us. Remember, Lang, curiosity without caution is death. Chapter 6: The Lost Keepers. Descending the spiral staircase, the air grew colder. The whispering voices multiplied, forming nearly intelligible phrases. The keepers wait, the eye watchers, the path tests. At the bottom, they entered a corridor lined with statues, figures cloaked, faceless, each clutching a cylindrical object. On the walls, inscriptions hinted at history long erased from memory. Richmond ran his fingers over the symbols, tracing them carefully. Clara photographed everything. These are warnings, I think. Each statue represents a guardian, and the objects they hold, energy conduits. Whoever made this place was preserving something powerful or dangerous. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the corridor. One of the statues shifted, dropping its object. A pulse of energy shot through the room. Lang stumbled backward, muttering about crystalline resonance and quantum feedback. Richmond grabbed Vin. Stay still. Don't touch anything. Silas fell to his knees, muttering, the keepers, they awaken if disrespected. The fort does not forgive. The team realized that every step they took altered the room. Tiles shifted, walls rotated subtly, and the whispering grew louder, warning, cajoling, threatening. Richmond's mind raced as he tried to decode the rhythm of movement, realizing the labyrinth itself was intelligent, a living puzzle. Clara's voice shook. Richmond, I think it's testing us. Each corridor, each step, it's a trial. Richmond nodded. Exactly. We survive by being clever and unified. No mistakes. Chapter 7: The Heart of the Fort. After hours of navigating twisting corridors and evading traps, they entered the central chamber, the heart of Fort Red Clay. There, a massive stone dais bore the largest spiral symbol yet, surrounded by glowing crystals. The whispering voices converged into a chorus. You have arrived. Only the worthy may witness the truth. Richmond stepped forward, hand trembling. This is it, the center of everything. What lies here will change our understanding forever. Lang knelt, examining the dais. The energy, it's immense. This is a power source, centuries ahead of anything we know. Whoever built this was extraordinary. Suddenly, a vision appeared in the center of the dais. A spectral figure, tall and regal, eyes glowing faintly. The figure gestured, and Richmond felt his mind flood with images. History of Fort Red Clay. Builders from an age forgotten. Guardians who merged their consciousness with the fort to protect its secrets. You are witnesses. The figure intoned within Richmond's mind. Respect the balance. Only the worthy may leave with knowledge. Silas fell to his knees, trembling. It's alive. The fort, it chooses. Richmond took a deep breath. We came seeking knowledge, we've found it. But we won't take more than we understand. That's our respect. The spectral figure nodded. The crystals dimmed, the whispering softened, and the oppressive energy lifted slightly. The team, exhausted and awed, realized the fort had accepted them not just as intruders, but as witnesses. Chapter 8 returned to the surface. The spiral staircase back to the surface was calmer. The labyrinth guided them with gentle shifts of walls and corridors, as if the fort itself wanted them to leave safely. Richmond led the team out, pausing at the opening to the central stone circle. The sun had set over the Cumberland River, casting long shadows across the fort's ruins. Richmond looked at his companions, Lang's excitement tempered, Clara's awestruck, Silas still muttering prayers. We've survived it, Richmond said, and we've learned something. But the fort, it remains. Its secrets are not ours to take, only to respect. Lang nodded slowly. The knowledge, it's beyond anything I could imagine. But you're right. Some things aren't meant to be exploited. Clara raised her camera. We've documented everything. The world will know some of what's here, but never the full truth. Silas shook his head. I'll never forget it. The keepers, they see everything. Richmond stared at the spirals carved into the stones, faint in the moonlight. Then let's leave it to the fort. It belongs to no one, except the keepers. They walked back toward their camp in silence, carrying the weight of discovery, the thrill of adventure, and the quiet knowledge that some mysteries are meant to endure, waiting for the next brave soul to uncover them. Epilogue. The whisper in the woods. Years later, Richmond Hale would speak of Fort Red Play with reverence, always careful to preserve the secret of its deeper chambers. Len continued his studies, inspired but forever cautious. Clara's photographs became legendary in archaeological circles, though she withheld the images of the eyes and the spectral figure. Silas never returned to the fort, claiming some places are meant only for the chosen. Yet, on quiet nights, when the wind shifts just so across the Cumberland River, a faint whisper can be heard in the woods near the old fort, carrying the message of the keepers. The watcher see, the chosen rise, respect the balance, and beneath the earth, the fort waits alive, patient, eternal.